And here we go, the Downward Facing Spiritual Spiral podcast. Of course, my name is Eddie Cohn. I am the host, creator of the Spiritual Spiral. Excited for today's episode. I'm always excited when I get to connect with somebody that I went to college with, of course. So Darin Campbell is today's guest. He was on the show actually probably about 8-9 months ago when Kobe Bryant passed away in January. Darin's really into sports. And I also think raising 3 children, he's living in Austin, Texas right now. He used to live in LA, but he's a big sports fan. But I also think raising 3 children during this day and age is really challenging. You know, the focus of my show is about technology and the impact of social media. So I felt compelled to reach out to Darin again and talk to him about a little bit about sports, about agendas. It does feel as though a lot of powerful conglomerates out there are using this virus to benefit themselves. And I'm going to record another podcast actually about it this evening that will only be available to my subscribers. Again, you can find me www.patreon.com/Eddie Cohn, where you can subscribe to the show. You'll be able to listen, even if you're not a subscriber, you'll be able to listen to this whole episode with Darin. But I have been wondering if this world that we live in now, combined with the huge corporate agendas going on, political agendas, societal agendas, it does feel as though people are thinking more about themselves. And so we talk about that. And again, it's almost like it's just, first of all, potentially it's Darwin, just, survival of the fittest. But it feels like we have to think about ourselves more than ever right now. And social media and technology is making us even more tunnel vision than ever and more myopic. So it's a very challenging world to navigate now. And I'm trying to figure it out. And I think one way to figure it out is to have these conversations. Doesn't have to be on a podcast, can just be face to face with your friends. But this is the other area that Darin and I talk about, this idea of creating a community. And I think social media wants you to think that you're building a community on social media, but it falls flat emotionally. And we need that human to human interaction to feel whole. So we talk a lot about that today. And you can find, actually Darin's more active on Twitter. So you can find Darin on Twitter at Darin S. Campbell. I'm always intrigued to talk with somebody who works in marketing because I feel like everybody is a self-promoter now. Thanks again to the complicated world of tech and social media. So I hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Darin. I always appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to the show. If you enjoy the show, head over to iTunes, please. Give it a review. Give it a 5-star. And I am going to be releasing some podcast episodes that are only for subscribers. So if you want to subscribe, head over to IamEddieCohn.com or just head over directly to Patreon.com/Eddie Cohn, where you can become a subscriber and subscribe to exclusive content only for subscribers. So that's it. A lot of podcasts coming up over the next few weeks. I've already recorded a bunch. I have to edit them all, so that's what my weekend's going to entail. So, as always, thanks to you for listening, supporting, and being a part of the Downward Facing Spiritual Spiral podcast.
How are things in California these days?
It's funny. I was thinking the last time we talked, it was very different than how it is right now.
Yeah, so that was right after
the Kobe
Bryant. So was that January, February?
Yeah, like around that time or so. Yeah.
Yeah, that is wild. Lots changed since then.
The air quality isn't good today just because of all the fires in California.
Right.
It's weird. Like, there's this strange energy out here. Sorry, I'm just turning one thing off. And I've been talking to a lot of my friends about this who are in the entertainment industry and actors. And a lot of people are leaving. And if you think...
Leaving California?
Yeah, they're leaving Los Angeles. I mean, first of all, it's expensive out here, and that draw to come out here and pursue acting and writing and being in film. The entertainment industry is done right now.
Yeah.
And
wow.
Yeah, and I start to think also, I can't suspect that movie theaters are going to be around. What's it like in Texas? Is it still shut down? What's the latest there?
I wouldn't say it's shut down, and it varies again, probably like California per city. But overall, many things are open. It's interesting. Some restaurants you'll drive by and you'll see pretty packed parking lot. The bars are still closed. I think the governor hasn't allowed bars to reopen. And, for Austin, that's sort of a huge deal because we have with South by Southwest, we used to have a pretty vibrant local music scene. And all of these venues and bars that are downtown, of course, with the university here as well. I mean, those were, packed night and day, and they're just empty right now. So there are definitely things like that. But overall, I would say, it's probably more open than a lot of places.
Yeah.
So
it's, there's a lot I want to talk about, but I'm going to do my best to condense this because I know
sure
it's late over there.
Oh, I'm a night owl. You don't need to worry about that. Yeah, that's
true. You've had like 5 Red Bulls today. This is the thing I've been really thinking about, and I'm just going to cut right to it here. I've been thinking a lot lately about consequences, and I know people may think I'm, conservative or a conspiracy theorist. I've realized something the last 10 days. And this is where I'm at. I believe there is a virus. Now, whether China intentionally released it or not, we'll never know.
Right.
I think something happened here. Pharmaceutical companies combined with the media, combined with politicians, combined with potentially Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg. I don't know if this was all collectively decided or if they all had their own personal agendas, but they saw an opportunity to pursue their agendas and make whatever they want to have happen. I don't think they thought it was going to get this far, but human beings are so triggered by fear of dying, fear of the unknown, and multiply that with the 24/7 news, fake news, social media opinions. I don't think any of them wanted schools to be closed. I don't think any of them wanted the lockdown that we've had. But when you have all of these agendas coming together at once, combined with what I just said about the news, social media, people's attention spans not being able to get behind anything, I think now this is why we are where we're at.
Yeah.
What do you think?
There's a lot there to unpack, but I would say I agree with you. I mean, you probably crystallized it for me better than I could articulate it. I definitely think that I try to be, when I approach news and social media, I try to always come at it from the perspective of, I want to listen to what they're saying, and then I want to try to kind of poke holes in it. Like, okay, who benefits from this message, who has an agenda behind it, and so again, I don't know that any of us can be purely objective in any way. We all come to everything with our own set of lenses and biases, but when you start to see the censorship we've seen, just the example of the hydrochloroquine, to me, I don't know if the drug works or not. I don't know if, it is a viable treatment for COVID-19. But to me, that should be a conversation between me and my doctor. And that should be available to him or her if they want to prescribe it. And when you see an immediate censorship of doctors that are saying, hey, this is working for us, it's working in other countries, and I mean, it's just shut down immediately. I mean, and that's just one example. But when you see that, that raises the hairs on my neck, and I think, okay, what's going on? Like, what do they not want? The powers that be, whoever that is, the pharmaceutical companies, the politicians, why do they not want this out there? I mean, who is that a threat to? And so I think, it's really, really interesting. And just to piggyback on one thing you said at the very beginning, you said conspiracy theorist, and I wanted to just talk about that term for a minute. I started looking into it. So just FYI, I studied communications, and some of the classes that I took in graduate school were rhetoric. So we looked at the foundations of speech and studied Plato and all of that sort of thing. Basically, kind of getting down to the root of words and what they mean, so that because words frame, they frame our reality. And so the term conspiracy theorist is an interesting one. Someone claimed recently that it was created by the CIA in the 60s to discredit anyone who had questions about the Warren Commission's report on the JFK assassination.
Okay.
That's not entirely true. The term had been around since the 1890s. However, what is true is that the CIA brought it into the mainstream, and they did use it in that way. They did use it. Anyone who questioned the Warren Commission, their report, which, I mean, I know it's ancient history now, but that report was completely bogus. And even subsequent committees that have studied it have even admitted that. So they use that term. And I think that, Eddie, what we see a lot of times when there's anything that goes against the status quo, anything that goes against what the message that the people in power want you to hear, they dismiss it as conspiracy theory. And that tells other people, oh, I don't need to pay attention to this. That's just some nut job who's in his basement with a tinfoil hat, but there's truth there, and I think we need to listen and pay attention to those things. So anyway, I couldn't really frame it any better than you did just now. And I would just say the things that have alarmed and really caused me to pay attention in recent weeks are the heavy, heavy censorship of different things. And you're seeing it go on right now with the whole, what's the group called? The QAnon group. I don't know.
Yes.
I've looked into it a little bit. I don't claim to be an expert on it at all, but I just noticed that I think Facebook removed a whole bunch of these groups, and they're shutting down everything. And so again, that piques my interest, and it makes me think, okay, what are they saying over here that is so dangerous? What is so dangerous that we can't have access to it? And, I'll shut up and let you ask your next question. But one other thing here.
Yeah.
My youngest brother, he taught English. When he graduated from college, he taught English at a university in China for nearly 8 years. He was an English teacher there in the university, conversational English. And the stories he had about people following him home, about his phones being tapped, about he would come back to his apartment and things would be moved and he knew someone was in there. I mean, all kinds of stuff, it's kind of scary. And we as his family were like, maybe find a job elsewhere, and he eventually did. But I think about that a lot when I start hearing these stories and I start seeing the censorship and all these other things. I think, could it happen here? Are we moving down that road? It's concerning. I mean, there are definitely people out there in power who have an agenda, and I think we can agree on that. And I'm like you, I don't know whether this virus was intentional or not, but I don't trust China at all. I don't trust what they've told us publicly. I don't trust their motives. I mean, I think I'm not against the Chinese people. I want to say that affirmatively. I believe there are a lot of good Chinese people. I don't trust the Chinese government.
It's not like I'm scrolling the internet for hours and
Sure.
and ruminating over this 24/7. I have a life that I have to live,
Right, right.
much like a lot of people. So but not that the life that I had before this was perfect, and not that the world was perfect here in America. There was certainly our share of problems, but I think we've taken a turn here, where I don't see us coming back, and I know that's a dystopian, draconian sort of comment to make, but New York and Broadway is just boarded up. It's a ghost town. It's literally a ghost town.
Right.
People are leaving the big cities. What's going on in Portland and Seattle right now is crazy, and the media doesn't want you to know about what's going on. They're not reporting it.
No.
I just don't think people were thinking big picture at all. You can't just, and again, I think the proof is in the pudding. You can't just tell people to stay home. You
Right.
know, the way that our world has evolved over the last 100 years to where it is 4 months ago, you can't suddenly, based on a capitalistic world, the vast majority of people don't have savings. The vast majority of people aren't working at Charles Schwab making $100,000 to $500,000 a year and get stock
Right.
options. I mean, people, the government is in this cloud where they're still getting paid even though they tell everybody to stay home. And my concern is I guess I talk about it and think about it because I guess I lament a little bit here that I adjust and I move and go with the tide, and because I think you're sort of being a little naive if you don't, but
Sure.
that world that we had before, I think it's gone.
Well, I definitely think it's going to be different, and you brought some good examples. New York, LA, the entertainment industry, Broadway. I'm a part of several kind of entrepreneur groups on social media. I mean, that's really the only reason I'm still on Facebook, is just to belong to some of these groups. And it's really, really interesting. A lot of these guys that started companies and different things, or venture capitalists. I mean, a lot of them live in New York, and a lot of them have left or are planning to leave. And they're open about it. They're moving to the South. They're moving to, North Carolina, other places, Texas. I think it's going to change New York and LA for sure. I mean, San Francisco as well. What's going to happen with all of those tech workers that will work from home for over a year probably? Are they ever going to want to go back and pay the rent in San Francisco?
No.
I mean, Silicon Valley. I mean, I wouldn't. And so, it's going to change a lot of things. I think the thing that's most disturbing to me, because it hits close to home, is just this. I'll call it an addiction. I think there are people right now who become addicted to the fear, and
absolutely.
They've been fed this fear from day one. They soothe themselves every day by consuming more and more of it. And unfortunately, I have family members that applies to. And man, it is just sad. My family and I mean, we try to be responsible. So, whatever your opinion on masks are, I mean, there's varied opinions out there. I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I do what's asked of me. So if the store says you need to wear a mask, I'll wear a mask. I'm fine with that. We're out. I mean, my boys played baseball all summer. They'll be doing sports this fall. Our school will hopefully go back here in a couple of weeks to in-person learning. And so, but I have family members that kind of think we're crazy. I mean, someone close to me, thinks that, they're pretty much locked down still.
Yeah.
And I don't, I never want to judge someone else and their situation, but it's hard to find some common ground because they've just become addicted to the fear. And that's what scares me, man. I see people on Nextdoor and other places, neighbors and things that express things like that. And that's what worries me.
Well, I was watching a couple more things about this area, but you keep bringing up things that makes me want to go down to the rabbit holes. But
that's all right.
But I was watching a show called Waco on Netflix, and one of the characters was saying you can get a man, I mean obviously, or a woman, but he just said man on the show, to get anything, to do anything from fear.
Yeah.
And I think it has really, there's two things that I think have gone on here. I was thinking about subscription services like Netflix and Spotify and Disney Plus. I think it's somehow made people lazy. And I'll tell you why. And this will connect to the fear point. It's easy to just spend $12 a month and have an algorithm feed you what you think you're going to enjoy. And Spotify, you're going to pay your $9.99. They're going to, everything's on there. Everybody's going to send, or the algorithm's going to send what they think you want. You have all these companies that are giving you all this information. Right. And so the brain doesn't have to proactively search or explore. Even I was thinking like the film critic and the movie critic. I remember, picking up Rolling Stone to read Peter Travers, because I always thought he was a good reviewer. Now people just look at a number on Rotten Tomatoes and it's like, if it's 80 or higher, I guess I'll go. So I think all of this has trained people to just like not give a damn and just sort of like, okay, yeah. I'll just stay home and sit on my couch. And so you couple that laziness with the media's nonstop fear mongering going on. And again, you got yourself a perfect storm where they literally have got people in the palm of their hands doing really whatever they want you to do. Right.
That's an excellent point. I hadn't thought of it in terms of subscription services, but I think you're right. And, we live in such an on-demand world now. Everything is instantaneous. It's fed to us. What was that movie? I'm trying to remember. I think it might have been Minority Report or something, where, the guy's walking past and there's all the ads that just appear on the electronic billboards that are personalized to him, feeding him information as he walks by. And, you think of things like that seem so far into the future when we watch those. And now it's like, man, that stuff kind of happens already. I look at something on, Amazon and boom, it pops up on Facebook, and the algorithm is really an interesting point you made, because it stops us from using our own critical thinking.
Yep.
And it feeds us what they want us to see.
Yep.
And I say that shamelessly as a marketer. This is what I do, is we study the Google algorithm to help our clients get in front of more people who will buy their products. So I understand how it works, but when you take it and use it in a nefarious way, like it's been done, now you've weaponized it. There's one thing about selling to people, in my mind at least, there's one thing about selling to people, but there's a whole other thing when you're curating what they can and can't see. We don't want to show you that. We're going to show you this. And, and that's where I get concerned. But you see Facebook doing it. You see Google doing it.
Well, and that's the thing. I think, people will say to me, Eddie, this type of advertising has been happening for years. And,
sure,
there's been billboards and commercials in the television, and I get it. But I think now with the algorithms and social media, they are really reshaping. They are moving the culture. And that to me is what's scary. And Mark Zuckerberg, I don't know too much about him. I should probably do more research, but I've heard some stories about him. But this world of ours it's strange. Going outside and people getting in fights over masks and again, this whole 6 feet distance thing that Dr. Fauci talks about and the masks. I'm telling you, couples that obviously aren't married, less people are having sex. I read articles in the Atlantic and New York Times where people don't want to have kids anymore right now because why have a child and bring him up in this world? So my next question for you specifically is I'm curious because I forget how old your kids are, but how are they reacting, and how, obviously you can't possibly have any experience of how to parent a kid, how to deal with a pandemic, because I mean, how has that been? And then are they going to go to school, or are they going to be homeschooled? Again, the consequence of just telling kids, oh, you're going to be homeschooled for the next like year, and a lot of kids don't have computers who are poor.
Right.
It's just, so how has it personally been for you and your children?
Yeah, great question. It's, I'm proud. I've got 3 boys, and one of them's young. He's only 4. So, my 4, I tell my wife and I kind of joke about it. You got to find levity anywhere you can these days.
Yeah.
We sort of joke around that, the quarantine earlier this year, like my 4-year-old and my dog were living their best life, because they had constant attention. We were always there. But for my older 2, yeah, so they, all the schools shut down in March, spring break, no one ever went back. And it was interesting when that happened. I don't know if you remember or not, but it was, we're going to shut down for 2 weeks to slow the spread. We just want to prevent the hospitals from getting overrun, and we kind of, my wife and I looked at each other back then. And even back then we were like, no, that's not going to be the case. But, so how do you parent in this? I mean, what we've tried to do is give our kids community any way we can. And so we found other parents that sort of had a similar outlook as us. Hey, we want to be safe. We know there's a real virus, but we also have been careful, and we want our kids to have community. And so my boys had some friends over, and they went over to friends' houses. We were some of the only people at one time that I knew that were doing that. So it felt a little bit like maybe we were rebels or something, but we just felt like it was the best thing for them. And then this summer, I would say one of the best things we did, luckily our governor allowed sports leagues to play. So both of my older 2 boys were on baseball teams. They got to practice every week. They had friends on their teams. They played tournaments every weekend. And that was really, really good for our entire family because it got us out of the house. It got us around other people. It just felt normal. We tried to give them as much normalcy as we could. But, there's a lot of things. Normally, we try to give them a lot of options during the summer of things to do. And, man, there was just not a lot to do this summer. There just wasn't a lot of places you're able to go. And so we would just have to kind of find anywhere we could that, hey, we haven't gone to explore this park before. There's some cool trails there, or things like that. Both my boys got into fishing, which was kind of cool. We have a creek near our house, so we started doing that. But yeah, I mean, will they go back to school? Yes, we're hoping so. Our school has said that they are giving parents the option, so you can keep your kids home or you can send them back. My hope is that our kids will be able in 3 weeks to go back. And our school has said that they did signups, and about half the parents are wanting to send their kids back. The other half are going to keep them home this semester. So, I think that's, when I talk to people that I feel like are reasonable and haven't been duped into this fear, this sort of fear, just haze or whatever you want to call it. When I talk to people who I think, actually critically think and ask questions and things, most of the folks I talk to are pretty reasonable. I mean, there's this stereotype out there, I think, of, oh, if you're not completely locked down, you don't want to wear a mask, and you're a Trump supporter, and, you want to kill my grandma and all this stuff. And, man, those are just tropes. I mean, those are just false. They're false, allegories that people have made up. There are a lot of reasonable people out there who want to protect their neighbor, but they also want to live their life. They want to remain open in their business. They want their kids to have community, and they want to do it safely. So,
and that's the
you never hear that voice, I mean, all you hear is these extremists on either side. And I think that's part of the social media. And we've talked about this in past conversations, but that is really the biggest danger and for me, a disappointment in that the loudest voices on social media are the extreme fringes.
Well, again, it does feel like the algorithms somehow get those voices to always rise to the top.
Absolutely.
Because this conversation that you and I are having, it's just this type of conversation can't exist on social media where I'm actually, pausing and thinking about what you're saying and how that affects me and where my brain goes. It's just the problem is that the vast majority of people are spending more time DMing and commenting, and that carries over to the real life. And that is where we are at an all-time high in depression and anxiety. Mm-hmm. And you bring up this point of community. And I think to myself, we went to Mammoth Mountain a couple weeks ago and, went mountain biking. And I swear, when I was on that mountain and biking down and making sure I don't run into a tree and stuff, I feel great. My mind is free. Mm-hmm. And the world in the media just wants everybody to stay home, and that is not an answer for good health. And I know somehow they've turned it in this way where if you don't stay home, you're not supportive of your neighbor, you're selfish. But no, you're going to have a world of anxiety and depressed people who are going to I read suicide is higher than it's been this year than ever. So you can't just. Again, you're thrown into a situation that you might not be prepared for to begin with, but you can't just prioritize. You're kind of thinking about some people, but really you're actually not thinking about all these other people that are killing themselves and becoming more addicted to pain pills or drugs. It's a no-win situation.
Yeah, it's very selective. What you said about the suicide and depression hits close to home. I mean, my wife is a practicing licensed professional counselor, and she sort of has a unique niche in that she sees a lot of teenagers and a lot of kids. And a lot of counselors don't want to see teenagers or kids because they're more difficult clients. They oftentimes will lie to you or won't tell you exactly what's going on. I mean, the basis of therapy is that you want to get better, and so a lot of times that's a challenge with teenagers and kids. Anyway, I say all that to say she started getting calls the first few weeks after the pandemic broke, and I mean, she has more business right now than she's had in the last 5 years, probably.
Yeah.
And she can't tell me about the clients. Obviously, that's top secret stuff, but it's interesting too. She does some phone counseling. But there were a lot of people that were like, we really need our child or our teenager to see someone in person.
Yeah.
And, so we figured out a way to make that work because, we just figured this was too important. These people are hurting and, some of them don't know where else to turn. One of my sons has a friend who basically was locked in his house, up until about a week ago. I mean, wasn't even really allowed to go outside. And, he was really concerned about his friend that, he was pretty depressed, and I just, again, I don't think these are bad parents. I think they're just scared. And I think they bought into the fear paranoia.
I'm a huge basketball fan, and I don't want to sound like a party poopery here, but I have to say, I watched my first NBA game, or not, that's not true. I think I tried to watch one a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, this is here's my point. At first, these new advancements, these new devices, these phones, this subscription, at first, or like TikTok or emojis, at first, we start to use them and we don't fully adopt it, or we don't oh, this is silly, this is stupid. I'd rather talk to Darin than send him an emoji. Mm-hmm. But then before you know it, a week goes by or a month goes by, and then all of a sudden using emojis all the time and not talking actually feels right. And I don't care about talking to people anymore. I'm actually more comfortable in enjoying emojis as opposed to talking. So the human brain sort of just gets used to these new things that come into our life. And I was thinking as I watched the NBA, there's fake fan noise. There's fake people, and then there's advertisements on the floor, of course, for like healthcare companies and Disney Plus, because they know everybody's scared and everybody's home. And I'm saying to myself, are people going to get? And I'm kind of glad that the ratings for the NBA have been terrible, because I'm thinking to myself, are people going to get used to this? And then I'm realizing how important fans actually are to the energy of a game. It is like watching a flat line of course, there are those moments if Damian Lillard like hits a shot from half court, and of course LeBron is still LeBron. But overall, it's like this, like I'm watching just a dead flat line energy, and it just makes me feel like I have no interest.
Oh man, you're hitting me close to home. I mean, you and I both, we've talked sports for years, and I know you're a big sports fan, as I am too. And it's a disappointing experience. So as let's say the NBA, as a Lakers fan, or maybe you're a Bucks fan or whatever, these teams that worked so hard in the regular season to get home court advantage, that's gone.
Yeah,
it's gone right now. So, I mean, in some ways, I'm trying to look at it. I'm trying to be optimistic. Okay, well, maybe this is a new challenge for teams. But yeah, there's no home court advantage for anyone, and that it kind of stinks because, man, I mean, I loved like back when the Kobe Lakers were playing the Celtics, and we'd go into Boston Garden or they'd come into Staples, and there was just that energy and that the hatred for the other team, and it's just all gone right now.
Yeah, and on the one hand, I admire Adam Silver for somehow getting this to work. I mean, again, this whole quote unquote bubble makes me want to puke, because the irony is that everybody is like living in their own little bubble right now, and and when I see the masks on the screen, it's almost like it's subconsciously. It's this weird, I almost feel like, and I've never been to China, and I've never lived in a communist country, but how like the things you watch subconsciously play into your brain, and it makes you feel like it's a reality, and I feel like that's going on. It's almost like they wanted to bring this NBA back so that they could continue to subconsciously persuade people to believe that this is the world that we live in. I know it's crazy to think that way, but it feels like this weird version of the Truman Show or something.
Right. So do you think that like, let's say Major League Baseball and NHL and the NFL is going to start up, supposedly this fall? Do you think that all of these sports will be changed forever, or do you think we'll get back at a point to where it was before?
I first of all, if this all goes away in November or December, then we all know that this was all about the election. So I think a few months need to pass. I mean, I have friends that tour with major bands around the world, and they're saying the touring industry might not get up until 2022.
Wow.
I mean, I don't know when people are going to collectively feel comfortable to sit shoulder to shoulder next to somebody at a sporting event. I don't know when that's going to happen. It could. I wouldn't be surprised if it happened in 6 months, and I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't happen for 15 years.
And I wonder too if it's going to vary again. It seems like a lot of this varies depending on where you live in the country.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the politics of it. I mean, I've got friends in Florida that, I mean, their life is pretty normal right now. They're doing everything they did before, pretty much. And and we're sort of halfway here in Texas. And then I hear about friends that live in other places that are really still pretty locked down. And so I just wonder, how does that come into play here too? How does the geography of, take college football, for example. Big Ten, Pac-12 say they're not playing. Big 12, ACC, SEC say we are playing.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's like, where you live determines sort of what you're able to do. And that to me is a big sign that, okay, something is going on here. I mean, if this were a true pandemic that was threatening the existence of every American, there would not be this wide variation of the ability to be, call it freedoms, if you will, this wide variation of how free you can be. So, I guess going back to your original point, I still don't have answers to it, but there's definitely agendas at play. And I don't know if it's one big agenda or if it's many different agendas. But I am going to be very interested, like you just said, how is this all going to play out after the election's over? Is there going to be magically, the numbers are so good now, we can magically go back to the way we were before? Is there going to be a push for this national vaccine that everyone has to take? You're going to go back to work or fly on a plane? I'm curious. I want to see what happens, because I do think there are a lot of agendas at play. And it's going to be interesting to see once this is over. My problem when you have certain messages that are forced on people is people stop questioning it. People don't think critically anymore. They don't think to themselves, okay, I'm against police brutality, and I'm against systemic racism, and I'm against police brutality against African Americans or any minority. I'm against that 1,000%. Oh, but the answer may not be to defund the police. The answer might be we need to, retrain some of the police. We may need to set up different committees to hold them accountable, or different things. But it's this society where we jump from one kind of battle cry to another, and no one questions it. No one asks a question.
That's a great example. I just realized as you were talking, it's like we move from one extreme to the next, and one little catchy slogan to sort of get people's attention, as opposed to really. I mean, I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast maybe a month ago, and he had a therapist on who deals with policemen or police officers. And the first thing Joe Rogan said was, people don't realize how difficult their job is. And
for sure.
I mean, what they're dealing with every day. And again, by saying that, it's not that you're condoning what that officer did to George Floyd at all, but I think we just need a little perspective here that I was thinking this the other day, just by me not having a good night's sleep, my decision making is not as good as it is when I get a full 8 hours. And I know I function better between 8 a.m. and 12 noon. And then I also function well between 4 and 6 p.m. So that's if I sleep well. But then you throw in, I had a couple drinks, or I smoked cigarettes all day, or I had a couple Red Bulls with some vodka, or I got into an argument with somebody. And then, then the brain goes in these mysterious, unpredictable ways. And then God only knows. So that's what we're dealing, that is human nature.
Right.
And we sort of forget all of that, we aren't these perfectly stable beings that just always are always good and know how to act and behave every moment of the day. It's just not possible. And then you couple that with the fact that everybody has a phone, and everybody loves to post something when you look like an asshole or an idiot. So that's what everybody just sort of sees and watches all day. We have lost all context with how a human being behaves day to day.
Right. And part of the danger too is this, what they call cancel culture. It's this culture of social media activists where we want to, basically find anyone we can who's behaving in a way that we disagree with, that we can, cause them to lose their job or whatnot. Man, I know you too, you got a great heart. I mean, neither one of us condone racism in any form or fashion, But I think back to like that Central Park occurrence where the lady had the dog and she
I recorded a podcast about it.
did. Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
you probably know more about it than I do. But my question in that situation was, how could this have been so much different if they had just put their phones away and talked to one another?
I know. That's
If
what
he
I
had
said.
just said, I mean, the woman, I think the Humane Society took her dog away. Her company fired her.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not condoning her behavior. Yeah, I mean, what she did was purely despicable, but it's like we've lost any sort of grace for people to, make a mistake or behave in a way that's bad. I mean, we just want to, I'm saying I mean cancel culture. They just want to label someone and cast them off, and man, that's a dangerous society that I don't want to live in when we've lost the ability to forgive and to offer grace to one another and to realize that, the person I was 5 months ago or 5 years ago is not the person I am today. You're one of the few people I know right now who's putting content out on social media that I feel like is constructive and productive and helpful.
Well, it's funny. I've been really, I do think social media ultimately is bad. Mm-hmm. And as my cat is like howling in the background, because again, I'm not, like my grandparents or my parents saying, I remember the days when I used to walk uphill both ways and I didn't take the bus. And I'm not complaining and being some old, I forgot the word, but I'm not being some, old man just complaining. I think art used to be better. I think there's value to being in a classroom and hearing other people's opinions.
Right.
There's value to sitting around the dinner table without the phone and listening and talking and connecting. And I do think, and you brought up this word earlier, community. People subconsciously are thinking the community that they're building, whether they're aware of it or not on social media, is a community. But it doesn't emotionally satisfy the same needs or desires as one wants to fulfill in a real life face-to-face community, whether it's a church group or being a part of a ball game or a ballet school or something. So I do ultimately think that social media has terrorized the world, but I have sort of embraced IGTV a little bit because I get the sense that at least I can have a conversation with somebody on IGTV or talk for like 10, 15 minutes where people get to see me actually as a real life human being and talk. Right. But I feel like when you get into that world of sitting on the couch and just scrolling, when you're just posting selfies of your whatever, having a smoothie, I mean, that's primarily what people are doing. And so that's what's troublesome to me. Then I think about the teenagers that a friend of mine brought up this interesting point, who's a therapist. She said, the problem with teenagers now is, you kind of have to be on all the time. Like she brought up, if somebody bullies you at school, if somebody bullied you like 15 years ago, you could at least go home and get a break. But now, like everybody has a phone, and then this bully could bully you on social media and call you an asshole. And so you could literally be thinking about this stuff 24/7. And that's scary.
I tell you, as a parent, it's probably our greatest struggle, and it's just how much do you allow your kids to be logged in or online? And it is a struggle. Yeah. We try to do that though very proactively because I mean, we can see in our boys just a huge difference when they've been logged into a screen for an hour, even an hour, 2 hours, whatnot. They're just different people. And so one of the things, you reminded me of it again, your question earlier about the pandemic and then what you just said, what are the lasting impacts of it? I think one of the things that has been cemented in my heart and mind through this is the value of face-to-face, or what we're doing, back and forth communication. It's invaluable. And so many people have been isolated, and so many people have, used that isolation where now they're doing what you said, they're posting pictures, selfies, they're spewing their opinions, political views, whatnot, and no one's listening to one another. No one's meeting up anymore and seeing how things are going, and that to me that's something we're going to fight hard against in our family anyways. And that's something that we fight with our boys about. No, phones, TV, computers, all of it's off. We're going outside. You're going to ride your bikes. You're going to throw the baseball. You're going to do something, play tag. I don't care. And they're always happier when they do. They're always happier. They always come in enthusiastic, with energy and joy. And it's like I got my kids back. And so, man, that is a struggle. And I just, again, kind of to close things up, but just, I think there's agendas at play, but the way we're going to fight against it, at least in my little world, is we're going to try to find and cultivate community any ways we can, especially for my kids. That means real in-person, face-to-face interaction. And we'll be safe. We'll take precautions. We'll do what we need to do. But that's just not something I'm going to be willing to forsake or give up just because some doctor who wants to make billions off of a vaccine tells me to. I'm going to fight against that. That's going to be my civil disobedience.
Yeah. Darin, man, it's always good to talk. I'm so happy. If anything, from my podcast, I'm happy it's brought us back together and talking.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really great to see you and talk about. I think really our time is limited. We have to enjoy ourselves. It's like
absolutely
I want to keep traveling and enjoy myself, and I feels like the world just wants everybody to just stay home for an eternity. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to other human beings, but before you know it, like we're not here. So we have to enjoy ourselves as much as we can and still be reasonable.
My wife Amanda, her 80-year-old or 89-year-old grandmother said something, and this is sort of the quote of the pandemic for me. We were talking to her, couldn't see her in person for a long time. And she told Amanda in one conversation, she said, being afraid to die is no way to live. And man, that just hit me hard. I was like, that is so true. And I wish I could get that message to some of my other family members and people that I know are just stuck in this fear of dying paranoia. But that's something that has stuck with me. So we're trying to live by that.
Yeah. Well, Darin, really appreciate all the time you took. And I have a sense we'll do one of these again in a few months.
Sounds good.
When something weird is going on and we want to talk about it. But I appreciate you chatting with me. It's always good to see you.
Always good to see you too, Ed.
Cool, man.
Good luck with everything. Good luck with the new album too.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'll send it to you when I'm done. I'm really excited by it. Well, cool, man. I'll see you on social media or on person sometime soon.
Sounds good.
Later,
Take
dude.
care.
Have a good night.